Hey there, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to the channel for the first time if this is your first time here. I'm glad to have you here either way. And I'm actually coming to you today with a response to a tarot tag, which is the first time I've done one of these for ages and ages. And it's actually the tarot tag All About Tarot, which has been put together by Simon from the Hermit's Cave. And this is very nostalgic for me because when I started my YouTube channel, well, I guess about 4 years ago, I did loads of tarot tags, did lots of responses to tarot tags, and I also created a couple of my own. And they were great fun, and it was a great way of getting to know people and meeting people across the tarot community. And when I saw that Simon had done this, I thought, oh yeah, it's been ages since I did one, and this is a really good one. So I'll do it. I'll respond to it. And actually, this tag is a rerun of a tag that Simon created quite some time ago, and he was doing an update video on his tag. And as I say, it's called All About Tarot. So I'm going to try and keep this video fairly short, within half an hour if I can manage it. I can't promise that because it's a meaty, juicy tag and there's lots of things to talk about, but I'll try and keep it below half an hour so that it's easy for people to digest. So let's get stuck in, shall we? And let me just get my prompts up. So the prompts are number one, what was your first deck and how did you encounter it? Well, I've spoken about that on this channel before. In fact, I think my first ever video was about this very deck. So I'll link that video somewhere so that you can go and see that if you're interested. But I'll just briefly show you that my first deck, my first ever deck, was one that I bought for myself, and it is Tarot of the Old Path. There's the very tattered original box that it came in. It actually came in a bigger box as well that was in. I lost that many years ago. But here are the cards. They're lovely cards. They're kind of Wiccan themed. That's the people who put it together were from the are from the Wiccan community, and it's just a gorgeous deck. I really love it very much. I still use it a lot. I'll come back to that card in a moment. That card plays a significant part in the story of how I encountered this deck. That's my favorite card in the deck, the Sun card. Gorgeous. Look at those lovely colors and the astrological symbols, and it's just a lovely deck. So I actually got this deck when I first got interested in tarot, and I went and bought it at the local bookshop in Aberdeen where I was a student. And the world card that I just showed you, which is on the cover of the deck, the reason that plays a bit of a part in this story is I saw the deck, decided I liked the deck, picked the deck up, went up to the counter, put it down on the counter, and only at that point did I realise that the deck had a picture on it of a woman spraying stars out of her breasts, which doesn't faze me in the least now. But when I was a little 21-year-old, fresh-faced university student in first year, having just discovered tarot and a bit shy, it kind of fazed me then, but not enough to stop me getting the deck and using the deck and loving the deck. And I can't remember if I've just said this, but it's based on the Rider-Waite-Smith system. So I learned to read with this deck, and consequently, as a result, I learned the Rider-Waite-Smith system, which I didn't realize at the time until later on I encountered the RWS deck, and much of it seemed familiar because, of course, this deck is based on it, but with that Wiccan theme. So that is my first deck, and that is how I encountered it. And also, I should just say that the reason I got into tarot was the girl who lived above me in my hall of residence at university had a tarot deck. I think hers was the one JJ Swiss, and we would sit and we'd do the tarot readings with the guidebook and had a great time, and that really kind of turned me on to tarot. And I'll say a bit more about what all that meant to me, because I think one of the other prompts is, what does tarot mean to you? So let's move on to prompt number 2, which is, what is your last deck, as in your most recent deck, and how have your tastes changed since your first? Well, the last one, the most recent one I got is this one, the New Chapter Tarot. Um, I will confess I have not yet used it an awful lot, but I liked it. I liked the images when I saw them, and oh, that's also appropriate. The first card that's come up is the Knight of Swords. That will come up, I'm sure, in answer to another prompt in a moment. And I just really liked the imagery on this deck. I like the artwork, I like the colors. I particularly like the fact that there's a real kind of diversity within the deck, both in terms of skin tone, but also in terms of gender, in the sense that some of the cards, or many of the cards, are appropriately conceived of as being either gender or no gender, or non-binary, and just kind of really kind of fluid in the representations. And I like that because I think it makes the deck very open, very accessible, and I like the fact that it's representative of different people and different viewpoints and so on. And I'd say that that probably is an area in which my tastes have changed a bit, because I didn't really think of those things when I first started reading tarot. I didn't even really, I don't think, when I first got my first RWS deck, I didn't particularly notice. I noticed later on, but at first I don't think I particularly noticed that it was dominantly white, because being part of that culture, we're enmeshed in it, and it's only really when you begin to broaden your mind and open your mind to these things that you notice that, and how problematic that can be. So now I like to support decks that are mindful of that and show diversity in age and gender and skin tone and all those kind of things. Anyway, lovely, lovely deck, and one that I'm looking forward to exploring a bit more. Um, and It's got a very good guidebook that comes with it. A nice, more than your usual kind of little white book. It's a hardcover book, instructional guide, and it has some information about the history of the making of the deck, and the fact that it has a couple of additional cards, actually. Exclusive cards to this deck are Gratitude and Invocation. I don't know if you can see that very clearly, but there's at least two extra cards. So very interesting deck, and one that is, yeah, representative of my preference for the way that decks present themselves now. I still love the old traditional decks, but when it comes to new decks that have the opportunity to acknowledge diversity a bit more, I like to support those. Okay, let's move on. Let me find my prompts again. I mislaid my phone there. Number three, why tarot? Um, well, yeah, I guess this means, why do you read tarot? Why are you interested in tarot? Why do you study tarot? Well, for me, I enjoy working with tarot because I'm a coach and I use tarot in the coaching context. I find it a very accessible and useful tool for exploring issues in a person's life, whether it's my own or a client's. I also find it very useful for helping us get beyond our rational mind, or our kind of predetermined channels of thought. It can really bounce us out into new ways of thinking and create new perspectives for us. And I think that's really important in my work. So I enjoy that. I love the symbolism of tarot. I love the fact that tarot symbolizes unity and wholeness. I think our purpose in life is to move closer towards unity and wholeness and away from division. And I think tarot is a great symbol of that. I think the whole of the tarot deck together is a great symbol of wholeness, but it also shows the diversity that exists within wholeness and unity, and that's important as well. That tension between duality and non-duality is really important to me. I also love the way that tarot reflects my thinking back to me. And that's one of the things I noticed about tarot when I first encountered it, when I had that experience of reading tarot with my friend at university. I wasn't particularly struck by the tarot's ability to predict the future or anything, although, there were some readings that we did together that really kind of threw me when they indicated things, shall we say, that then came to pass, and that really kind of opened my mind to um, the way that tarot can work beyond the boundaries of space and time. But what really impressed me most, it wasn't that. What impressed me most was I noticed that when I did a tarot reading for myself, it helped me get clearer about my thoughts. So if I was confused about something, or if I had a lot of thoughts swimming around in my mind and I wasn't quite sure which ones were thoughts worth pursuing, then tarot helped to really clarify that. A well-chosen reading and spread, that is, and a well-formed question combined with the cards could help me clarify my thinking. And that's what really impressed me. So why tarot? I think it's a great tool for improving our lives. And that's basically it. The next prompt is, what are your tarot pet peeves? Um, I don't have many pet peeves in tarot. One, on a very practical level, one that I will speak about is one that actually is prompted by the fact that I've got a deck here, which I'll talk about for another reason in a moment. And that's the Spiral Tarot, again in a very tattered box. You can tell that I'm not very good at looking after my deck boxes. But this is another deck that I really love. And it kind of triggers two pet peeves in me. One is I really don't like decks that have obtrusive and unnecessary borders, and this one did, in my opinion. Not everyone feels this way, but I didn't like the borders of this deck. That's on the back of the box. You can see an image of what the cards look like with their borders. This kind of purpley pinkish border and the red lettering with the name. For a long time, I ignored this deck because every time I saw it, I just found those really obtrusive and objectionable almost. And so I didn't really pay much attention to the Spiral Tarot until I saw an image of the deck posted online without the border. So it was just the painting in the middle. And of course, on the computer screen, it was very backlit, very bright, much bigger than it is in the deck. And that really attracted me to the deck. So I got a deck of my own and I removed the borders. It's about the only time I've done a borderectomy on a deck. I'm not particularly big on doing that because most borders don't bother me enough to do it. But this one did. And as soon as I did it, I felt like this deck just came alive. And I love it. And it's one of probably my second favorite deck actually after Tarot of the Old Path, my first deck. There's the Magician card. Gorgeous. Lovely artwork. And actually, in this deck, the artist, Kay Steventon, who's the deck creator as well, apparently these are all really big paintings that she did. And once she had done the paintings, some of the paintings had jewels stuck on them, like, kind of crystals, jewels stuck on them. So I don't know if you can see it very clearly here, but there's a tree of life image on many of the cards, and it's there as well. And each of the Sephiroth is actually represented by a little crystal, a little jewel. And on the original paintings, they're apparently stuck on. So that's my other pet peeve. Lovely cards, but they're very small. I would love this deck to be reprinted without the borders in a large size or a larger size. I think it would be more respectful to the art, shall we say. So a couple of my practical pet peeves, unnecessary borders and cards that have terrific artwork that are so small that you can't really fully appreciate the artwork. But those are minor things. They don't really bother me that much. On a broader note, my only other real pet peeve in the tarot world is when people get very entrenched in dogma. So what I mean by that is when people start saying things like, there's only one correct way to read tarot and I know what it is, or there's only one legitimate system and I know what it is, or the older systems are better than the newer ones, or tarot is useless unless you're doing only esoteric learning through tarot, rather than that fortune telling stuff, or vice versa. Tarot is only legitimate if you're doing the fortune telling stuff, and everything else that's been added onto it, like the esoteric systems like astrology and Kabbalah, that's nonsense. You just stick to the basics. All of that, whichever position you take, if it's a rigid position like that, I think is dogma. And I just think dogma is unhelpful in almost any walk of life, and certainly in tarot. I just think each to their own. If people enjoy the esoteric side of tarot, have at it. If people love only reading with the Marseille deck and they don't do any of that esoteric stuff, have at it. If you love the Rider-Waite-Smith system, that's great. If you love the Thoth system, that's great. You're entitled to your preference. I just think that it becomes tiresome when people then start poo-pooing other people's approach to tarot. So that's probably my pet peeve. And when it happens, and I hear people do that kind of stuff, I just tend to roll my eyes and move on. That's how I deal with that. What is your favorite tarot spread? Well, that's a good one. I think probably my very well, my easiest favorite tarot spread is a three-card reading. I think a three-card reading is better and more powerful than a one card or a two card, although they're very popular. For one very important reason, and that is that the number three is a number of forward motion. So when you have one card, one point in a system, you've got one perspective. When you have a second one, as in two cards, you've got a second perspective, and they can either be complementary or they can be in conflict. They can represent two ends of a spectrum. They can represent opposing forces, etc., etc. But you're always going to have that duality, that kind of binary between one card and two cards. When you add a third card into the mix, then you get that dynamic forward motion because there has to be a resolution of some sort. So I find if I'm asking a question about something and want some guidance, I rarely will pull only one card or two cards. I'll usually always, if I'm doing a quick reading, always go to three. And I find that the interaction between the three cards is what really helps me see a way forward in whatever circumstance it is that I'm looking at. So that's my favorite simple tarot spread. Um, I also do enjoy using the Celtic Cross. I know that many people don't use the Celtic Cross now, or it's almost in some schools of thought, it's almost become a bit hackneyed. I think there is a bit of dogma around this actually. People can be a bit dismissive of the Celtic Cross because it's the one that's in most of the tarot guidebooks, and it seems very standard. And when you learn tarot and you start talking about tarot spreads, the Celtic Cross is usually the one that people talk about. So it's kind of dismissed a little bit, unfairly, I think, because or what happens is people say, "Oh, I can't get on with the Celtic Cross; it's too complicated. There's too many cards, and they're all meaning different things, and I can't quite get my head around it." So what I say to that is, I think the Celtic Cross has a lot of depth to it. The way I look at it is actually it's multiple spreads within one, because you can look at the cross part of it as one kind of set of cards. You can look at the column at the side as another set of cards. Even within the cross, you can look at the vertical three cards as one reading, or the horizontal three cards as one reading. You can look at cards diagonally. There's all kinds of different things you can do. You can look at them in pairs. There's all kinds of creative things you can do with the Celtic Cross. So I think it really bears further study, and taking it a step at a time. If you struggle with the Celtic Cross, I would encourage you to relook at it because there's a lot in there. There is another spread, and I'm going to see if I can. I should have done this, prepared this before, but I'll quickly try and draw what I mean. There's another spread that I really like, and it's a 7 card spread. It's a bit like a simplified version of the Celtic Cross. So I am going to attempt to remember what the order is. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, and I'm also going to try and remember what each of the cards means in this spread because it's been quite a while since I used it. But it's basically this. So you've got your 7 cards. You start with card number 1, which either you can pull blind, as it were, or you can make this the significator card. And the reason that you do that is that this is actually a card that represents the client. So it can either be one that you choose ahead of time, as in a significator, or you can pull it as part of the spread. The second one, I think, I've got to get this the right way around. I think the second one would mean the past, the recent past, maybe the last 3 months or so, maybe a bit longer, maybe a year or 2 years or 6 months, whatever period of focus you're looking at. The third would be the present, so within a month or two either side of now, and the fourth would be the kind of immediate future, maybe 2 or 3 months ahead. That's if you're looking at kind of time within the reading. That's what those cards can represent. Although you can choose that those 3 cards represent anything else that you want in the reading. And then it's very difficult doing this back to front. I always struggle with this when I'm doing camera work. The fifth card, no, it's up here. The fifth card that represents the. So you've got the client there, and then you've done their past, present, future, and then the fifth is their attitudes and self-concept, if you like. So how they're feeling about the situation, and what that means for them, and the thoughts that they're having about it, and whether those are problematic or not. And then six is the influences around them. That can be circumstances, or it can be people, or it can be anything really that influences them in their life and in the context of the reading. And then the seventh card is the outcome, and that of course takes you back. Then no, no, hang on, I'm going to get this right. I can't do this. How do I do this? I can't get it to go. My finger is not going in the right direction. I'm trying to get there. This is weird. Okay, yeah, so you go from seven. Let's do it this way. You go from seven back to one. So that's the outcome, which leads back to the client. That's how it works. So that's how I hope I explained that reasonably. I'm rushing a bit because I don't want to take up too much time, but I really enjoy that spread. There's a lot of meat in that spread. And then the other one, oh, one more spread I'll talk about before the next prompt. My favorite spread of all time is the one that I design with the client I'm reading for, or with myself. In other words, I take the issue at hand, I work out what the key questions are in that issue with the client if I'm working one to one with someone. We assign a space on the spread for answering that question, and then we assign one or two or more cards for each of those spaces, and then we build the spread up like that. So a co-designed spread is my very favorite. That's the ones that I find clients have almost more investment in, or I have more investment in it if I've designed it myself, and that really helps to get to the meat of the issue. Okay, so that's my favorite spread. Your preferred tarot system. I don't really have a preferred tarot system. If I had to pick one of the big three, as in Marseille, Rider-Waite-Smith, Thoth, I'd go for Rider-Waite-Smith because that's the one that I learned with. My very favorite system, though, is fairly basic, and that is a combination of the element of the suit in hand, whichever card we're looking at, whatever suit it is, plus the number of the card in sequence. And I did a whole series of videos called Tarot to the Nines. Many of you know me from that series. It's available free here on my channel. And that's when I looked at tarot through the lens of number. So I see number as being very significant in the tarot suits and in the major arcana, because it tells a kind of sequential story of where we are in a process of development. So if you know the number, i.e. where you are in a process of development, plus the meaning of the suit, based on your understanding, it doesn't have to be a rote understanding of meaning, based on your understanding of what that suit represents, whether it's, water or fire or air or earth or something else, then you can glean meaning from the card just by knowing the number, just by knowing the suit. So that's my favorite system, the combination of those two. Do you have any tarot rituals? I really don't. The only ritual I have with a new deck is I try to mix the cards really thoroughly before I start reading with them, because there's nothing more annoying than you do a reading and you get a sequence of cards, which might happen, of course. Like the three of wands, four of wands, five of wands in a row. That could theoretically happen in a randomized reading, but whenever that happens with a new deck, I just assume I haven't mixed it properly, and then it makes me doubt the reading. So that's my only ritual: mix the cards thoroughly. And I have to be careful with that because I'm not very good at riffle shuffling, so I have to really take time to mix them thoroughly overhand. Number 8. How do you use tarot? Do you use it for introspection or divination, etc.? Well, most of you know who follow me will know that I use tarot for coaching. That's my big thing with tarot. I use it as a coaching tool. I've got 2 tarot coaching courses on sale at the moment, and I mean literally on sale, as in a special offer at the moment. You can find details of that somewhere around my channel in the community tab if there's not a video yet. And one of those is about learning how to combine tarot and life coaching in a single session. So that's for anyone who wants to mix those things together. That's called Tarot Coach Session Success. Then I have another one called Tarot Coach Go Pro, which is for people who want to move their tarot reading and coaching skills into the professional arena, or refresh their professional practice, and we go into all kinds of things like setting your business vision and marketing your services and selling in a way that feels good and authentic, and how you find your ideal clients, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, for me, I use tarot for coaching, both for myself, self-coaching, or for the clients I work with when I work with clients. Um, that's my thing about tarot. Okay, let me just take a sip of coffee. Sports Direct. I'm in Birmingham, and of course, it's the Commonwealth Games this past fortnight, closing ceremony tonight. It's been a real buzz in the city. It's been lovely. I mentioned that, right. Um, what's your significator card, and why do you feel it represents you? Well, it depends how I choose my card. I mentioned, oh, I've probably put it away. I mentioned when I pulled out the new chapter tarot. I don't know if you noticed that the card. I'm sure I put it away actually, so I won't bore you trying to find it again. No, I did. So the card that came up was the Knight of Swords when I pulled this out, and that is one of my significator cards because that's the card, the court card, that represents my date of birth. If you look at uh, the the decans they call, which are the splits of the various degrees of the zodiac. There are 36, so you split the zodiac into 36 lots of 10 degrees. They're the decans. Um, and each one represents a different date. And for my date of birth, the court card that relates to that decan is the Knight of Swords. So that's one of my significator cards, and I find that quite appropriate because I'm a Gemini. I have lots of air in my astrological chart. Swords are about air, and I'm also quite a go-getting person, entrepreneurial kind of person, focused person, a bit like a dog with a bone sometimes. So I'm quite pointed. Once I decide I want something, then I go for it. So that suits me or fits me in many ways. Another way of choosing a significator is using Myers-Briggs system, where you have your personality type. I'm an INFJ, and usually the court card that relates to is the Queen of Cups. Not always, it depends how people decide to assign the card to that system, but usually it's the Queen of Cups. Intuitive, emotional, um, receptive, feminine in some ways, in certain sensibilities. So that's quite apt for me as well. So I recognize myself in that card. Probably the significator, though, that means the most to me and I recognize the most is the one that I get when I numerologically reduce my birth date down to a single number. And I've got a video somewhere on this channel about how to do that if you don't know how to do that. And I get the number 7, which means that my birth card is the Chariot, and then I also have a shadow card, teacher card of the Tower. And those are, for a variety of different reasons, very apt. And the thing about the Chariot card is, again, I recognize myself in that card because that's a card of, some would say, control freakery. I wouldn't say that about myself, although I think some people would. But certainly a kind of a solidity and forward motion at the same time, a striking out on one's own, um, a kind of control of different opposing forces, and a forward-looking kind of attitude, sometimes also a bit like a steamroller, some would say. Um, so I think that is a description of a part of my personality. And what's interesting is that many years ago I discovered that my middle name, Cormac, which was my mum's maiden name, if you trace it back to the old Scots and look up what it means son of the charioteer. So that's quite an apt connection there. And in fact, the chariot is so important to me. I have a print of the chariot from the Rider-Waite-Smith system up on my wall in my office, so it looks down on me while I do all my work. So that's an important significator for me. Uh, 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 your most expensive tarot acquisition. Well, I mentioned the Spiral Tarot. It's not this deck that was the most expensive acquisition. Probably the most expensive single acquisition was a few years ago. I bought the book that goes with this deck, which is out of print. I'm not sure what it goes for now, but at the time it was very hard to get hold of, and I paid. It's only a small book, really. I haven't got it with me because it's in storage at the moment. But I paid about 60 quid for the book because I really wanted to know more about this deck, and that's probably the most I've ever spent on a single book to do with tarot. The most I've ever spent on a single tarot set was probably this one, the Dali Tarot, which is a lovely deck. I'm sure many of you are aware of it. I'm not going to show you all the cards. In fact, I won't even show you any of them because I haven't got time, and they're all kind of packed away. Maybe I'll do a different walkthrough of this deck at some point, but that probably is the most expensive single deck that I have. And then once I bought a big box of used decks on eBay, and that cost quite a lot. That was probably about, I don't know, 100 quid, but it had lots of decks in it, many of which I grew to really love. And you can, in fact, see that video of me unboxing that box from several years ago now elsewhere on my channel. I hope I remember to link all these videos that I'm referring to. So that, let me just get, oh dear, my phone's not letting me back into my prompts. Hang on, here we go. That was the most expensive acquisition. Just to say, I'm not really a big deck collector now. I did used to get decks more often, but now I'm more interested in the practice rather than in kind of collecting tarot. Which leads neatly on to my next prompt, which is, what's your unicorn deck? What is the deck that you're aware of that you would like to have that's really hard to find? Well, for me, no brainer. I know exactly what that one is. It's the original Greenwood Tarot. Now, there have been lots of kind of knockoffs over the years. Also, there's been some debate about whether it's appropriate to print the Greenwood Tarot, given that the artist has not been seen or heard from for many years. There's talk of the Greenwood being reprinted by one of the co-creators, Mark Ryan. I don't think that's really come to fruition yet. If it did, I'd be very interested in getting it. But I'd love to have an original Greenwood Tarot deck, and I've never seen one in real life. So, that would be my unicorn. But as I say, I'm less into decks now. So a few years ago, I would have probably paid a lot of money for one of those if I had found one. Now I would think twice, because for me, the power isn't in any single deck, no matter how desirable. It's within us and within our practice, our tarot practice. So that's my take on that. We're nearing the end. Second last question. What's the most important lesson the tarot has taught you? Well, for me, it's that everything is connected. Everything is connected, even when it seems disconnected, and that any moment and any circumstance in our lives are an opportunity to find our way back to that wholeness. And I think that tarot can really help us do that, because if we start with a question or an issue or a difficult circumstance and we consult the tarot, each single card is like a portal back into that wholeness, that multiplicity that the whole deck represents. And I see every card as being connected to every other one. So for me, that's what tarot's taught me, that everything's connected. Even when we feel quite fragmented in our lives, we're not really. It's just we need to find our way back to that wholeness. And finally, my last prompt. Who would be your tarot dinner party guest? You're allowed one guest of honor, and you're allowed two other guests, dead or alive. So, well, this is an interesting one. I would say my guest of honor, who is still alive, is Byron Katie. I studied with her a number of years ago. I read this book a number of years ago. This is the revised edition of her classic book, Loving What Is. Her work has been a huge benefit in my life. What I love about it is it is a real complement to my coaching approach to tarot. It's about questioning stressful thoughts and through that being able to move forward into a more fulfilling life. In some ways, her work is very much in the kind of self-help arena, so it's very accessible, but it's also a gateway into non-duality and some of the teachings of people like Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta Maharaj or Rupert Spira, some of the modern teachers who are into that kind of non-duality. And these are people who perceive that wholeness that I talked about, who don't necessarily see the world um, in a separate way that many of us are habituated into seeing it. So she would be my first guest. Another guest would be William Shakespeare. I studied William Shakespeare at university. I think there's a lot of mystical wisdom within his plays and poetry. Um, and I would love to just be able to hear from him where he got his inspiration and uh, what his view of the world was, because it's not always possible to tell that just through his plays because they're so diverse. So it would be very interesting to hear that. And then my third guest would be someone, and I'm ashamed to say I don't know if she is still with us or not. Cynthia Giles, who wrote these two books, The Tarot History, Mystery and Lore, and its follow-up, The Tarot Methods, Mastery and More. I don't hear an awful lot about these books now. They're not hugely famous. They're reasonably well known, but I don't hear a lot about them nowadays. But I think they're great books. I think they're really, really interesting. And she goes into the history of tarot, the kind of the mystery side of tarot, how it got wedded to occult systems and so on, and then all the different ways you can use tarot. That's in the first book. She goes into things like quantum physics and all that kind of stuff. And then in the second book, she goes a little bit more practically into you know how tarot might develop in the future, how to use different processes like divination and using it for wellness and personal growth and so on. So I just really, really love both of these books. In fact, I got them out because I want to reread them. So those would be my three guests: Byron Katie, William Shakespeare, Cynthia Giles. And that, my friends, is the end of my All About Tarot tag. And I'm only, well, about 6.5 minutes longer than I wanted to be. So I'll stop here before I go on even longer. I'll say thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Simon, for creating this tag. And I hope to see many more responses to this tag. I've been enjoying the ones I've seen so far. So it would be great to see some more. It's a great way to get to know each other. So I hope you all are well, and I wish you the happiest of days, whatever you're doing. And I'll see you again very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.